Members of the violent Nicaragua gang tipped off by the media. Border czar Tom Homan says news leaks derailed a massive ICE raid in Aurora, Colorado that was targeting the gang who took over apartment complexes there. Earlier this week, hundreds of agents searched the complexes for hours and only 30 arrests were made, and only one of them was a gang member. They were expecting to arrest at least 100 TDA members. Now, this as the FCC is now probing a George Soros-backed radio station accused of broadcasting the live locations of undercover ICE agents during their operations in California. This was in San Jose. I want to bring in former acting DHS Secretary and Executive Director at the America First Policy Institute, Chad Wolf. And Chad, good morning to you. And I want to get your reaction to this egregious move by this radio station to endanger these ICE agents.
Yeah, it's really important. Look, anytime operational details get leaked about an enforcement operation or really any law enforcement operation beforehand, it's dangerous. It's dangerous not only for the law enforcement agents that are exercising in that operation, but also for the targets, and in this case, the illegal aliens. It makes it dangerous for everyone and anyone involved there. So I think what you hear from Tom Homan and others is not only does it diminish the effectiveness of apprehending criminal and dangerous individuals, but you're putting law enforcement at risk as well, because now they don't know what they're kind of going into. They don't know what the opposition has in store for them, and that's when things can go bad. So I think that's why there's a lot of concern about these operational details being leaked time and time again.
Well, I think why this is so concerning is what Tom Homan told reporters. And here's what he said yesterday. He said this is not a game. And he said we know that TDA is dangerous. And he said we could agree that if they get a heads up we're coming, only a matter of time before our officers are ambushed.
Well, that's exactly right. It's not that they're going out and just arresting any criminal alien. These are dangerous individuals, part of a very dangerous international gang that has proven time and again that they will do whatever they have to do to evade law enforcement and continue their operation. So they're going into a dangerous situation beforehand, before any type of operational details have been leaked. But once they are leaked, again, they have to make the decision. Tom Homan and others at ICE need to make the decision. Do they go forward or do they have to pull back? And every time they pull back, again, that's just another missed opportunity to go out and protect communities by removing criminal aliens.
Yeah, no, and look, we're going to move on, but I want to call out, because Soros bought pieces of like 200 radio stations. This is San Francisco-based KCBS 740 AM. I just want to point that out and put that word out, that this is the station that they're looking at to investigate. So let's talk about these criminal illegal Venezuelans and these migrants, the ones that are now heading to Guantanamo Bay. And we know that they've been on the second confirmed flight to that detention center. Some of the members, again, are Nicaragua. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem took to X. She listed some of their crimes by these prisoners on that second flight. Here you go. Confessed homicide, being wanted in Venezuela for escaping from jail and for aggravated robbery with a weapon, intent to commit homicide, weapons trafficking, robbery, distribution of dangerous drugs, assault, impersonation, fraud. Chad, your reaction to the move to put these members down in Guantanamo?
Well, I think it's the right move. Look, we talked about that during the first term of the Trump administration, never had the ability to execute that. Obviously, they're doing that now. And as as the secretary has laid out, these are the worst of the worst that are going down there. But it also provides immediate detention capability. So every individual that ICE picks up, they apprehend, they target, they apprehend, and then they want to remove from the country eventually has to go into a bed first, even if it's just for 24 to 48 hours. So you need detention space. And so they have that down in Gitmo. The Coast Guard has used it in the past for migrants that they pick up on the seas coming up from the Caribbean. They have the ability, they have the muscle memory to do this. It's the right move, and I think you'll see more of this in the coming months.
Okay, well, certainly the cost is going to be an issue, but we'll talk about that another day. I do want to move on to this. Yeah. Texas Congressman Morgan Luttrell introduced the Cartel Act. So this bill requires Customs and Border Protection to report if individuals on the terror watch list have been released into the U.S., and it mandates the tracking of individuals associated with cartels who have attempted to cross into the U.S. Now, the cartels are reportedly ordering attacks on U.S. Border Patrol agents. They're using kamikaze drones, explosives, and they're using social media, encouraging migrants spit urinate on Border Patrol agents. Chad, I want to get your thoughts on kind of where the situation in the border may be going here with the cartels. The point was made in our program yesterday that this is a billion-dollar industry, and the cartels are losing, at least right now, millions of dollars because the numbers at the border have gone down. They're not going to take this lying down, Chad.
I don't think that they will. Obviously, President Trump and his team are putting a major disruption in their operations, and we're likely going to see some effects, right? They're going to respond to that. We'll see what that response looks like. If it gets violent, I think President Trump and, again, his team is ready to respond to that. Look, the cartels, as I've been saying this for years now, should be public enemy number one, and President Trump is taking this threat seriously. From the human trafficking to the illegal narcotics to the fentanyl coming across this border, it all originates with the cartels. And so we need to stop admiring the problem. We need to go after them. We need to target them. So the legislation that Congressman Luttrell, I think it's a good first step. The foreign terrorist designation, there's a variety of things that you can do, but I think now is the time to do this. If we want to put a dent in the human trafficking, the child sex trafficking, the fentanyl crisis that we have here, we've got to get serious about the cartels, and it's not going to be easy. Otherwise, it would have been done already. It's going to be difficult, but I think if anyone can do it, it's going to be President Trump and his team. And
this is why you have the Secretary of Defense and the military at the border as well. Chad Wolf, great to see you, Chad.
That's right.
Thank you for being here. We'll be right back, everybody. We're taking a quick break.